All right, everybody, so we're going to take a look at the 2.2 homework, solving conjunctions and just disjunctions with inequalities. Again, like we talked about in class, when it comes to a conjunction, you're welcome to split it apart into two separate inequalities, or you can solve it all as once. So number 19, start off by subtracting 1 from all three parts of my problem. So I end up with -6 is less than -2k is less than 2. Divide by -2, which means that I need to flip. Let's not mark that so it looks like an equals 2 sign. So I make sure and flip my inequalities. Now, technically, you are allowed to leave it like this, but I think most of us prefer to see the smaller value on the left with the larger value on the right. And since it fits into that format with the smaller value less than the variable, less than the larger value, we know that our areas are going to overlap. I'm able to sketch my graph. Again, if you prefer to draw the line in the middle on the number line, that's fine. I sketch above just for clarity. All right, number 20, same thing. I start by subtracting 2 from both sides. End up with my -8 is less than or equal to -3m is less than or equal to 5. Divide by my -3. Oh, sorry about that. Divide by my -3. So again, you'll notice that I have flipped my inequalities, which again, I prefer to see my smaller value on the left. And it fits into that format, smaller value, less than variable, less than larger value. So I know that my graph is going to be in the middle. 21, again, start by subtracting 2. End up with -5 and -3. To take care of the negative value and the denominator, I'm going to multiply everything by -3. Since I'm multiplying everything by -3, I know that I'm going to have to flip my inequality. So -3 and -5 get me +15. Notice again that I have flipped my inequalities. I'm left with d in the middle, and -3 times -3 gets me 9. Again, I prefer to see my smaller value, my variable, than my larger value. Noting that only the 9 is or equal to, so only the 9 has the filled in circle, and the 15 has an open circle. Similar work in 22, I'm going to have to eliminate that fraction. What's a little interesting is that they've put the smaller value on the right, the larger value on the left. Not very common, but it's going to work out at the end of the problem. First thing I did was subtract 1 from all three sides. I get 2 and -3. Next, to get rid of the negative and to get rid of the 2 in the denominator, I'm going to multiply everything by -2. Since I'm multiplying by -2, again, notice that I have flipped my inequalities and end up with -4 less than or equal to n less than 6. Finally, seeing our or statement, so it's okay for these not to overlap. Start solving my first inequality by subtracting q from both sides. The other inequality is a single step. I'm going to divide by -11. Notice again, since I divided by a negative number, I have flipped my inequality. I continue solving on the left-hand side by adding 1. That's going to get me 6q is greater than 12. I'll divide by 6 on both sides, and I've got q is less than 2. Q is greater than 2. Q is less than 3. So I sketch q is greater than 2. I sketch q is less than 3. And I've ended up with an or statement where the entire number line is accounted for, so q is all real numbers. Now, as we've seen in other sections, as soon as we end up with a problem that has all real numbers, we tend to see something that has no solution. So in the next problem, I start on my left-hand side by adding 1 to both sides. On my right-hand side, by subtracting 2 from both sides. Notice this is an and statement, so I should expect my two graphs to overlap. I divide by 5 on my left. I divide by 4 on the right. And I end up with n is greater than 1/5, and n is less than -1/2. When I go to sketch my graphs, though, my n is greater than 1/5, my n is less than -1/2 never overlap. And since this is an and statement, a conjunction, and there is no overlapping, I know that we have no solution. 25 falls into what could be a unique category, but since I have x and x on either side of the middle term, I don't have to break this up into multiple inequalities. If these had been separate, like one said 2x and the other one said x, like we're going to see here in a minute, we actually have to split this up into multiple inequalities. So I start by subtracting x from all three parts of my problem. I add 5 to all three parts of my problem. I divide by 2 in all three parts of my problem. And again, since I see the smaller value is less than the variable is less than the larger value, I know that my graph is going to overlap in the way I expect. X is greater than -1 and less than 8. So what I was talking about a moment ago happens in 26. On the right-hand side of the inequalities, I've got a y value. On the left-hand side, I've got a 3y value. Since these two values on the right and on the left don't match, I actually have to take the time to break them into two separate inequalities joined by the word and. If you try to solve this all as one inequality, you're going to see that you can never isolate the y value. So, on my left side, I begin by subtracting 2y. On my right side, I begin by subtracting y. On my left side, I subtract 5. On my right side, I subtract 1. And I end up with y is greater than or equal to -4, and y is greater than -2. When I go to sketch these, y is greater than -4, and y is greater than -2. They don't start overlapping until I get here, greater than -2. So my final statement, my final answer, y is greater than -2, and my final graph is simply going to be open circle at -2 and going to the right. 27 has some fractions. You might be noticing some unique things, like we see m minus 1, m plus 1. Looks almost like they're the same. Not quite, though. So in either case, I begin by subtracting m on all sides. Now, on the left, to get rid of my -7/4, I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal, -4/7. That's going to take care of the negative sign. That's going to take care of the fraction. Similarly, let's see. Oh, I think I might have made a mistake on my other side. Yes. Let me make this correction real quick. All right, so we're going to make a quick correction. So on my left-hand side, since I've got -3/4 and 1, I'm going to have to multiply everything by -4/3. That's going to flip my inequality. Notice that I have flipped my inequality. And then on the left-hand side, I've got m is greater than -4/3. Now, if I take a look at my graph, I've got my -4/3. I know that I want to be greater than it. Just insert 0. I've got my 4/7. I know that I've got a closed circle at 4/7, and then I go to the left. So I've got an or statement that overlaps. I've got all real numbers. 28, I see another and statement, so I know that I'm looking for where my graph overlaps. On the left-hand side, I'm going to start by subtracting 3z. On my right-hand side, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to subtract 3z. On the left-hand side, I've already got 7 is less than z. On the right-hand side, I've got to divide both sides by -7, which again will flip my inequality. So by the time I finish my problem, I see that I've got z is greater than 7 and -1 is less than z. As I go to sketch my graph, z is greater than 7. For some people, it's easier to see how to graph this if I rewrite it as z is greater than -1. And again, since this is an and statement, notice they don't start overlapping until we get to the 7. So my final answer, z is greater than 7, and our final graph would simply be an open circle at 7 and moving on to the right. Number 29, I have to start with a little bit of distribution. So I distribute my -2. Careful, make sure you distribute the -2 to the -3 to make it +6. I subtract 6 from all three sides. I divide by -2 from all three sides. So again, notice I have flipped my inequalities. Again, I think a lot of us prefer to see the smaller value on the left less than the variable less than the larger value on the right. Fits our model, and so I can graph the area between 0 and 9/2. Number 30, very similar. I start with some distribution. Once I've distributed, I've got to combine my like terms of 1 and 4. Subtract 5 from all three sides. Divide by -2, which again is going to flip our inequality. I rewrite in the format that I like the best. Smaller, inequality, variable, less than inequality, less than the larger value, and I've got my sketch. All right, hopefully this helps with 2.2. Sorry if you attempted it a little early. That was my mistake for not fixing Canvas. Again, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask in class.